Following program may be pre-recorded.
The following program is paid for by the Lone Star RIA. Welcome to the Massive Passive Show, where you'll hear serious discussions about everything real estate investors encounter building their portfolios. Many radio shows and podcasts talk about real estate investing, but the host of the Massive Passive Show actually do it. Sit back and relax and learn about becoming a massive passive deal maker.
Good morning and welcome to the Massive Passive Show, brought to you by the Lone Star RIA. This is James Haney, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by one of our co-hosts, Ray Sasser. Good morning, Ray.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we have a jam-packed show like we always do. It's going to be a little bit fast-paced today. We have two very special guests that are going to be on the show today. First guest is going to be the George Salas. He's going to be talking about Airbnb and short-term rentals. And then we also have Wayne Roych, who is a certified 1031 exchange specialist. He's going to be calling in later on the show. But before we jump into that, what we want to do first is go ahead and acknowledge one of our vendors. His name is Matt Stockard with Stockard Power Systems, and he's an electrician. And he's, you know, if you got an electrical job, he's the one that you need to call.
Yeah, we had a tenant. We did a stupid thing. We had a tenant in a garage apartment agreed to do repairs and stuff. And I've learned this lesson about 5 or 6 times. First of all, they never do the repairs. And then when we went to evict him, the stuff that he had torn apart, he went and called the city and said, "Look at what they've got here." And it's like, "Okay, you dummy, you took the dead front off the panel, not us." And so then they called the city over, and with that messed up mess. And so now they want us to pull an electrical permit for the work that he was doing. And so they're mad at us. And then when we were evicting him, he subpoenaed the electrical inspector with the city. So the electrical inspector does not like us at all now because he's going to court over something he doesn't even know what's going on. So this guy was using this guy as a tool. And of course, they ended up evicting him and everything else. But then we had to call Matt in, and you were probably wondering, like, what does this got to do with Matt? So we had to call Matt in, and then Matt just took care of it. He dealt with the city. He brought everything up. And the thing is, with electrical, once they come out there, if something's not up to current code, there's certain things that they can make you replace. And so we had to bring a lot of stuff up to current code, where most of the time you don't have to do that. So thank you, Matt. If you're listening, thank you for bailing us out of that one.
Yeah, and again, you know, that's one of the main things because electrical is a major safety thing. So to get, one of the things I forgot to do at the beginning of the show was mention where you can find all of our information. So if you're looking for an electrician or any of our other vendors or any of our upcoming events that we're going to be talking about today, you can go to lonestarria.net. That's lonestarreia.net. And all of our information is there. Anything you need to find out about us is on that site. That's lonestarria.net. So let's go ahead and
wait, before you get it, I want to just add one thing to that. I know you're in a hurry, but the vendors we have on there, they're all vetted. They're for investors. A lot of them are investors, and they understand how to work with investors. And anybody that's out there, if you cater to the happy homeowner, that doesn't mean that that's a good vendor for an investor. It's a good vendor for an investor, somebody that can get out there, get the job done, get it done to code, not make excuses, and not ask for all the money up front. And so, unfortunately, the happy homeowners, they don't have good resource a lot of times because the vendors aren't vetted, and our vendors are. If we get complaints on them, we boot them off. And we don't, because everyone on there is somebody that we have experience with.
Yes. So again, lonestarria.net is where you can find that information. So let's go ahead and bring our first guest in. As I mentioned, his name is George Salas. And I've got to know him pretty good over the past couple of months. And he is a short-term rental and Airbnb specialist. And so I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself. So good morning, George.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
doing one from.
I was doing real good until I found out. I thought you and I were friends, and I found out you went to Hawaii. You didn't invite me. You didn't ask me to carry your baggage. It's just like you didn't take care of Ray. What's going on with that?
You know what? I had to take my wife this time, brother. Next time we'll do like a double couples.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal time though. We spent 7 days there and went to a few islands. It
Well,
was
how
amazing.
in the
Best
world?
time.
How in the world can you go and goof off? And you told us you didn't have a reception most of the time. How can you goof off and then have all these Airbnbs that would normally make people pull their hair out? How do you manage that?
Well, we've got the experience already in, right? We built out a team over the last 4 years that has allowed us to actually automate the entire business. So we can be there, not have service the entire day, and have people, some of virtual assistants and just a team of people that are managing the entire thing, the entire process. They know how to handle all aspects of the business. That's how, brother.
You know what I think, George, what I love about that, and I wish you did in 4 years, what I still haven't done after 35 years, is figure out how to take a time off. But what I love about what you're doing is now that you're kind of clear of that, you can actually keep your head in the game that you want to play, which is how do I grow the business? How do I run the business better instead of working in the business every day?
Yeah, absolutely. So the goal was always that, right? The goal was always to automate and actually work on the business and scale it. And then we just launched in, obviously, like everybody else, has to, you have to jump onto the business and really just learn every aspect of it. That's what we did, right? That's what I did over the last 4 years. And now, we've got it automated, we've got it under control, and everything happening on its own. So appreciate that, Ray.
Well, let me give you one more compliment because it's the truth. I've been playing around with starting Airbnbs for the audience to know this. I think it's important. I've been going to other Airbnb events and trying to learn and taking tours and stuff. And it wasn't until I went to yours and you really kind of drove home the math, how the math works and how you run it and how you organize it and how you kind of take yourself out of the loop. To me, because that was a big deterrent to me. It's like I did not want to buy a job. And but we had lots of properties, so I thought, man, if I can figure out how to make this work without me being in it every day, that I'm going to move forward. And it was your class that got me started, and we got 4 Airbnbs up and running. We got the 5th one ready, but we're not ready to get that up and running. But it's because we have some people living in it that we've got to move them because they're our workers. But you inspired me. And I don't know what it was, but you're the one that finally connected the dots for me to pull the trigger on that. And I'm glad we did.
Well, I appreciate that. I remember that day. I think it was literally just like 5 months ago, right? You came in and you're like, I don't have any Airbnbs. I want to launch it. And I think we've talked about that before then, since, last couple of years, you've been saying, hey, I want to get Airbnbs going. So I'm glad I was able to, inspire you and get you going there, brother. Yeah, you're a mentor to me, so for sure, man. It's amazing to see that.
Well, we're going to go for 10 because I figure 10 is a sweet spot for us because then it allows us to. There is a lot of learning that has to go into this. This is not something what you don't know can cost you thousands of dollars, and I don't want that cost. I want to be able to reach out to somebody and say, "Okay, George, I'm having this problem. What do I do?" So, but our goal is to get to 10 as quick as we can.
I love it. Yeah, one thing that I don't think you're able to see at the last speaking gig is that most people just think that Airbnb or short-term rentals, hey, let me just go and figure out like what this property is. And they get properties in their pipeline and they try to convert them into Airbnbs, and they're like, okay, cool, this was doing okay, this was doing fine. In our process, we've got a little bit of a different strategy, right? We start with the market first. We find out what the most profitable property type is in that market. So we start with the revenue first, essentially, right? By figuring out the market. Then we go to the property, right? So if I'm an investor and I have a lot of deals on my pipeline, if you're just kind of seeing, hey, do these deals work for short-term rentals? I mean, they probably do, right? But you might not be maximizing the amount of revenue you're bringing in, right? We literally focus only on six-figure short-term rentals, which are median luxury short-term rentals, right? Compared to what we did at the beginning, right? When we just launched any property that came into, oh, this is nice, this is really cool. Like, I think this will make a good Airbnb. The location is good. It's not just about location, right? There's a process to it. Our process, in simple 5 words, talks about, number 1, the market. Number 2, the property. Number 3, the staging and design. Number 4, your marketing, right? And then number 5, the guest experience. If you have those 5 process steps down, then you've got it going on, right? You're gonna succeed no matter what, because those are the most important steps of the entire process. If you really nail them down, and of course there's a lot of details inside, but essentially those are the major steps. And we've got the vision. When you really know what's most important, then you're driven to really work on what's most important all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the numbers that helped me see things more clearly, and now that I understand that number, I use that kind of as a measuring stick of how I'm doing, is when you talked about like rent multipliers. And just, can you kind of describe for the audience what that means as far as Airbnbs go?
Yeah, absolutely. So the standard gross rent multiplier, right? The gross rent multiplier will be the comparison to how much revenue can you bring in comparison to the value or your purchase price, right? So the standard is about 10%, right? Most people, they're in between 5 to 10%. So if they're purchasing a $500 property and they're bringing in 50 grand, then that's norm. That's normal. What we do through our process is we have a threshold, right? And this threshold limits us to start at 20%, right? So we don't do any deals unless we start at 20%. And we didn't do that from the beginning, right? But now that we know how to calculate the numbers, now how we know how to really nail down every aspect of the business, right? When we're launching it, not improve it as we go. Now we're going and we're having a threshold when we launch an Airbnb, and it's 20%. So if a property costs me 500 grand, I've got to bring at least $100,000, right? That's one of the ways.
Well, just
the other way.
Can I just add on to that real quick? So, and that, to me, that's genius. And I don't know if everybody's really picking up what that means. It's like, now that you understand what your goal is, now everything you do is going to determine whether or not you can reach that goal. So when you evaluate that property, it's a play or no play based on that goal that you think. And so you're going to actually try to project and predict what it can do based on your experience and based on your testing.
Absolutely. And it doesn't just happen like that. You can't just buy a property and say, oh, okay, this is going to make 20%, which is 100 grand, right? You got to put a little work into it. And those details we're going to talk about next Saturday. Those are the details that we're going to break down, right? And those are the 5 steps of the process, right? The other way that I look at the gross rent multipliers is what I call the sweet spot, right? The sweet spot multiplier, right? Just a separate way to sort of have an immediate measure of if the property's going to work, right? And that way is I want to be at a 3 to 5x my rent or mortgage. We actually launch these properties that bring us $15,000, $20,000 a month by renting them in addition to buying them, right? So we don't only buy properties, we also rent them, which is really cool, right? So if I am going into one of my analyzer tools, right, and I find out that this property is going to make, $90,000 for that first year, right, and then I am going in and I am renting or buying this property, and I'm calculating the PITI is going to be around 2,500, right? So then I'm going to take the 90,000, right, divide it by 12 months, which is my average gross monthly rent. Right? And then I'm going to divide that number by my rent. What do I get if I divide 90,000 by 12 months? That's 7,500, right? And then I divide that by my rent, which is 2,500. Now I've got a 3x multiplier property, right? So what is a 3x going to do to me, right? That's what we're going to go over next Tuesday, right? It'll take me probably about 20, 30 minutes to really make you guys understand what a 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, but you want to be, just know this, you want to be between 3 to 5x. Not every property does that, but you could do it by tweaking your listing, by having a great marketing strategy, by the staging and design, by picking the right property with the right amenities, right? So little things like that, Ray. I hope that was valuable for everybody.
No, it's perfect because we just looked at our numbers for last month on our 4 Airbnbs, and we're at 2.5x. And so now I know, like, hey, our car is not running on 8 cylinders. We may not have picked the right properties. We may not be running something right. And to me, it's kind of exciting because, first of all, it is 2.5 times what we would get in rent. But even more exciting to me is that we've got room to make it better. We've got to learn these things because what I don't know is going to literally cost me thousands of dollars. Because if I can get that 2.5 to 3.5, that's thousands and thousands of dollars every year. So my ignorance is costing me money.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I would say, Ray, when I got started, I went for lots of 2X properties just because I didn't know that one little thing that could change the entire business model, right? That could change my life essentially. Because if I went for 3X, I would have made a lot more money over the years. But sometimes it's not. There's many factors that create that, right? I still have some 2.5X and 3X and 4X, right? I have some 5, 6X, and they don't essentially make 5, 6X every month. But just to give you an example, our highest properties brought in $23,000 and $22,000 this month. The $23,000's value is $750,000. You can do your math there. The $22,000 is a $500,000 property that we rent for $3,500, though we own, and the actual PITI is around $3,000. Okay, so if you do the math, those are crushing it. But essentially, over the 12 months, these properties are going to be right around 4X, right, 4 to 5. Right. But some months you're going to have your little lower seasons, right? And then other higher seasons. So there are a lot of things that you got to do. But if you know how to pick the right market and property, then everything else you can switch. If you don't pick the right market or property, then you can't make a 2X property into a 4X. You understand?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can put
the right
lipstick
market
on
and
it,
property
but it's
gives you
still
pretty much everything. Yeah, like your acquisitions.
a pig with
Right,
lipstick is still a pig. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
So George, we literally have roughly a little over a minute left in this segment, and then we're going to have our next caller come in. But just to let our audience know, George, you are going to be our main speaker at our meeting next Saturday. So what is one thing that you want the audience to take away, or what is one thing that you want to encourage the audience to come and get from your presentation, other than the massive amount of content that you're going to be delivering?
Absolutely, brother. So the takeaway from today is don't just go to and do any Airbnb. Really nail down. If you do something, do it of excellence. How you do anything is how you do everything, right? So go get a winner short-term rental wherever you are. That's the takeaway from today, right? Don't just go do any short-term rental. Just do it the best way possible, and that's with this process, right? And then what we're going to be talking about at the meetup next week is essentially how to create 6-figure short-term rentals out of median houses, right? How do you turn this $400,000, $500,000 house into a property that will bring you $100K or more? That's what we specialize in right now today, right? So, and we're excited to see everybody. So hopefully, you guys can make it out here. Thanks for having me.
Well, awesome. Thank you,
Ray,
George, for being on. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next Saturday.
Absolutely. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate you.
Thanks, George.
Bye. All right.
All right, so that was awesome. If you're wanting to, if you heard that and you're like, man, I gotta get over to that meeting next Saturday. If you're able to, if you're driving, don't worry about it yet. But go to LoneStarREIA.net. That's LoneStarREIA.net. And you'll see a link on there for Greater Houston REIA. Just click on that link, and all our information will be there. Go ahead and get pre-signed up for it. As if you have been to one of our meetings, you'll know we'll have breakfast tacos and networking. George will be there. Home Depot is going to be there talking about Pro Extra accounts and how you can save thousands on your rehabs and things like that. So again, LoneStarREIA.net is the hub for all of our information. And we look forward to seeing you next Saturday. And I'll repeat that here in the next few minutes, a few more times for you. But I believe is I think we're transitioning into our next segment with Wayne Roych, who is a certified tax exchange specialist with Texas 1031 Exchange Company. Is he online? Good morning, Wayne. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Hey, Wayne, how are you? This is Ray Sasser. I want to thank you for being so patient with me and all those goofy questions I was asking you a couple of weeks ago.
Well, that's what we're there for. Help you out through the process and make you as comfortable as we can.
By the way James, you said tax specialist, that sounded scary.
No,
well, not tax specialist.
No, certified
only the 1031 side.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah. So maybe we ought to let you tell people kind of like from the 20,000 foot view of what exchanging is real briefly, and then why we need to know what it is. This is especially for people who have assets. Kind of give us an overview of what it is, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Yeah. And to answer one question, many people think that the exchange is, or 1031 exchange is just a loophole in the law. It is certainly not. It's been around since 1921, part of the Internal Revenue Code. So it was designed from the get-go to encourage reinvestment in real property and at one time other assets as well. But today it is limited to real property. And really all it does is give you an opportunity to defer paying taxes on a sale of investment or business property. In other words, so that if you reinvest all of it, you can defer paying any taxes, so you have the full amount to reinvest in replacement properties. That's the big bonus.
Let me interrupt you real quick. So
sure,
that's a little subtlety that makes all the difference, because you're not. If you were to go out there, buy something, hold it for a while, sell it, then go buy something else, that money, that percentage that would go to taxes is gone. It doesn't get to go into your next project that then you can make a return on. So you're losing that piece.
That is correct. That's my old mentor, who was one of the early practitioners of 1031 exchanges in Texas after they changed the law back in 1991. So consider it like an interest-free loan from the federal government. And that's capital you can use forever if you just keep utilizing 1031 exchanges as you go from one investment to another investment. So it is a big deal. And like you said, once you pay those taxes, they're gone forever. So you may as well be using that money rather than the U.S. Treasury.
Yeah, and so if you're getting, let's just pick a number. If you're getting a 5 or 7% return on your investment, that piece that you gave up, you don't get that 5 or 7% return because it's gone. Whereas if you do the 1031 tax deferred exchange, then you're getting that return on that money that you would have given up.
Correct. And that's exactly why the code was set up, that help people in their reinvestment and not deduct that from their capital. Essentially, that they're able to reinvest over time, and hopefully there's a multiplication of that investment over time.
Yeah, and one of the things I know in my case, the reason why I reached out to you was because we have properties that don't fit what we want to do anymore. They're a little bit more bandwidth. They take more bandwidth from us, and so we're kind of restructuring what properties that we own, and so that's why I brought you into the picture to help me do the tax deferred exchange, so I don't pay that hickey. But in your experience, what motivates people? What are some of the different things that motivate people to do the tax deferred exchange?
Well, that does vary among people. I guess the least subtle of all is that they just don't want to send their money to Washington, D.C. and maybe not use for the best purposes. And, that varies. We've had people that have done exchanges, say $500 in taxes, primarily on principles more than anything else. But really, it is a preservation of capital. They want to keep that money in their pocket, use it to reinvest. Many times, the tax savings alone are the equivalent of what their down payment may be to purchase additional properties. You can sell one property and buy multiple properties in an exchange, so you can keep expanding your investment horizon, your portfolio, and you're doing that with the aid of it's a great segment of the 1031 code. It doesn't fit every situation. Ownership structures a lot of times set up roadblocks in what you can actually do, but for the most part, it's a very straightforward process. You just follow the rules. That's basically it, and the rules aren't all that onerous for the most part.
Can you kind of give us kind of a highlight of what the rules are so people have a sense of what we're talking about?
Sure. Number one, make sure that you engaged a intermediary such as us prior to ever closing. If you close a project or a sale without a intermediary in place, there's no exchange. You can never have constructive receipt of those funds. That's day zero, the day that you close on your sale. Now you've got 180 days to complete your purchases of your replacement property, because there is a time limit. And that 180 days is split up into a 45-day so-called identification period, another 135 days after that. What that means is you've got to know from the get-go, or have a pretty good head start on what replacement properties you're looking at. It doesn't go on forever. Like I said, 180 days total, but you have to identify or list potential properties within 45 days after your sale. That's the challenge these days with properties coming and going very quickly, is getting ideas and perhaps even your replacement properties under contract even before you close on your sale. That's not always feasible, but you'd be surprised how, if you're doing all this ahead of time, there are a number of different things you can do to help you in that process. So while that 45 days period, yes, it is very short, and you do have to have specific properties in mind, there are other ways you can work with the sellers of potential properties and a number of things to help you with that timeline. But once you start, it's going, and you got to work yourself through it. Yeah, right. You don't have a lot of time.
Well, I know in our case, because we're kind of in the market all the time, it's actually, I'm going to knock on wood here, but I think it's going to be easier than, I was actually kind of fearful. And, but as it's turning out, we've already got a couple properties under contract. And so we're really kind of holding them off long enough so that we can close on the exchange properties. And then basically when you get the money, then we're going to try to close on those other properties as quick as we can.
Right. That's the ideal scenario. Certainly.
The other thing that scared me is like, what is the penalty if I don't pull this off?
Actually, there is no penalty. We do have a fee. It's a very nominal fee. But if perhaps you get to the 45th day, you haven't found any properties that you want to buy, you don't identify anything, obviously, because you don't want to own them, and you get to the 45th day, the exchange is over, we send you your money back. There is no penalty from the IRS. You have lost your fee in that process, but that's, like I said, that's very nominal. Other than that, that's it. That's the only downside. There's a couple of more things, if you do identify and then now those properties fall through, your deals fall through, you lose access to your money for 180 days. That may or may not be an issue with some people, but we're finding, even in today's rapid market, we're finding a fairly high success rate of people entering into the exchange. And again, preparation is a big part of that success. And we encourage people to get out there early on and understand the rules. Talk to your intermediary, someone such as I, well in advance, and so there aren't any surprises. your accountant. We always encourage you to talk to your tax preparer, your accountant, but we'll work with them. We'll talk to you through the mechanics from the get-go. We're here to answer questions just like your accountant would be. Now, and keep in mind, a lot of accountants don't know a whole lot about 1031 exchanges. They've only got a couple of million pages of code they got to learn. We have to get 1,000 or 2 pages to learn. But
no, I really tried to stump you the other day when we were talking, but you had all the answers, and you may not know it, but I bought 4-house package in San Antonio, and the person I bought it from was a friend of mine, and they used you to do an exchange. And they took the 4 houses and exchanged them into 1 house. But they got, what they did is they took a property that's 200 miles away from them that they don't want to drive and manage anymore. And they bought a property closer to them. And instead of having 4 properties, they bought 1 really good property. And so they had nothing but great things to say about you. And can be kind of a confusing process, and it is kind of nervous. It does kind of make you nervous that, hey, you have a closing and then the money has to go not into your account, but into the facilitator's account. So how do we know that we're being protected in that regard?
Well, most QIs handle the funds the same way. We go into a bank that actually specializes in holding 1031 exchange. That's key to working with the bank that knows what's going on. We have specialized accounts just for every client. Their money is in their account, identified by their name and tax ID. The banks or depositories we use, actually, we provide them a copy of the exchange agreements, so they know exactly why those funds are there and who they belong to. And believe me, they vet the even our clients to make sure that those are legitimate accounts, legitimate funds. Banks have got all kind of regulations these days as well. We also do carry fidelity bond. We carry errors and emissions insurance. We don't have those requirements here in Texas, but we do work in a number of states that do, like California, Colorado, Oregon, our neighboring states. So we work all over the United States, and we just made it a part of our deal to be able to do that. There's only 2 states in the U.S. we cannot work in from our origination of an exchange, because they have licensing in those states.
So it wouldn't be uncommon for somebody to sell a property in California and then turn around with those funds and buy something in Texas. So
no, not at all. We do a fair number of those. And there's people that are, say, moving in, like in your previous example, they may live in California. They may have some rental properties in California. They don't want to try to be a landlord from a couple of thousand miles away. So as they're moving, they're also selling investment property in those states and moving to Texas or moving. We've had people living in Chicago, selling in California, buying in Florida. I mean, there's just all type of scenarios, but in all cases, what they're trying to do is preserve their capital so that they can reinvest it in properties elsewhere. Perfect example of why it works in the favor of the taxpayer.
So let's just kind of do some real simple kind of hypotheticals here. Let's say I have $1 million asset that I want to exchange out of, and if I have a $900,000, a $1 million, and $1.1 million, how does that go down with those 3 scenarios if I'm exchanging into?
If you're selling a $1 million property and buying a $900,000 property?
Yeah, or I'm buying, so both scenarios where I'm buying one for less than the money I'm receiving, or in another scenario where I'm buying something for more than the money I'm receiving.
Sure, that there is no issue with that. Say if you do what they call buying down, your replacement property is lesser value than what you sold, you can merely pay tax on that difference, or you can go out and buy a second property. In the case of you're buying a property of greater value than what you sold, you just add money to the equation. That's done at closing. We don't handle those funds. that money can come from anywhere. It can even come from the seller of the property that you're buying. If you want a loan, but those don't complicate things at all. Not really.
So, Wayne, how long have you been? Has this been your primary business, exchanging?
Yeah, it's right at 20 years now. I was lucky enough. I had a friend of mine back in the early 2000s. Actually, I worked with him, and he was an accountant or CPA that went around teaching other CPAs about 1031 exchanges after the code was changed back in 91. So, yeah, I was in commercial real estate prior to that time. About 2000, I got together with him. He also had, his wife had a brokerage, and really got interested in the 1031 transactions at that point. And so I and my partner have both been in full-time involved in 1031 transactions since about, right at 20 years now.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question is because you've probably seen some pretty creative ways to make these exchanges work and get past difficult issues.
Well, yeah, it does, and interestingly enough, every few months one of those comes along. So they're head scratchers, and we just got through with one, and working with the client's attorney, I think we got the issue solved. And sometimes it just doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't fit the code or the purpose, and as you get into different types of ownership, that's where most of the issues evolve.
Yeah, and I think the key takeaway is that it can get technical pretty quick, but the thing is, if it's something that is that you're dealing with, is just pick up the phone and call you, and then you kind of guide them through the process and help them understand it. And I appreciate that you're doing that with me and my son, because it is new to us and it is challenging, and there are some things that there are a lot of things we don't understand. And I just feel like we're in really good hands with you, because you just take the time and explain it to us. And I'm almost 100% sure that no matter what I ask you, we're going to throw something at you at the end that's going to be different than anything you told us, because it doesn't always end up the way you expect it to.
That is correct. Yeah, it's usually a fluid situation unless you've actually got it all tied down at the get-go. But, and in these days and time, you're out there, you're searching for a different thing and something else, and that isn't available. Okay, let's go to, what about plan B? What about plan C?
Right.
And work with you. And a lot of people call up and say, well, I really don't know anything about this. We've never done it before. Well, that's the way it is with most people. And that's why we try to take people through the process. We can't really say a whole lot about their tax situation, but we'll walk you through the mechanics of the exchange step by step. And if we see something that's probably a little more involved in how they need to deal with their taxes, we'll tell them that. And if their tax advisor accountant has some specific questions or actually disagrees with what we say, we'll provide the documentation. I'm not going to tell you we're always 100% right. So we had those discussions with their tax professionals, and we try to resolve it. And if we think we are right, and we've had those conversations before with people that absolutely they thought we were incorrect, if we felt strong about our situation, we just provide the IRS resource. And
right.
Here it is. Here's the proof. You go look. You make your own decision.
Well, I'm gonna get James to coerce you into doing like an afternoon session for one of our RIAs, maybe for an hour or two. And the other thing, James, you need to get Wayne to do is get a videotape or something where we can put that resource on our website. So if anybody wants to know like the ABCs of exchanging, then they can just download the video, and then that way they don't have to ask you 500 questions like I did.
Well, and we have thought about that. We've thought about putting it on our website. We have a fairly informative website, but just like you said, that right at the end, somebody's going to throw something totally different to you, and you just never know how you're going to respond, and you don't want any misunderstanding because a lot of times what works in one situation, it's not always so black and white. So we need to be able to reverse ourselves sometime and say, okay, we better qualify this. Now, if it works, 95% of the time, but maybe this other 5% of the time, you got to look at something else. So, yeah, it gets a little difficult sometimes to, just put it in a black and white and clearly, well, here it is, and that's the only way it can be.
Like in our case, when I first told you that we were exchanging and we had that conversation, and then you found out later that it's coming from two different entities, then that changed basically the path that we were going to use. It didn't stop us. It just changed the way we were going to do it. So,
Correct. Yeah. And that's why we do like to have those conversations in case something comes up. And I mean, it is our job to really listen and make sure, because, again, people don't always know. They don't know the rules. And we've got to ferret out if there's some information there that might change what they're trying to do or what they're allowed to do. And that's the key to making this thing successful.
Well, as an investor, and with my investor hat on, one of the things that it was really an aha moment for me is somebody said it, and I don't know how it happened, but it actually sunk in and I actually understood what they were saying. But the aha moment was, as a discount buyer, I'm always thinking like, oh, I don't want to get in this trap where I'm doing this exchange. I'm selling something I've got, and then I've got to go out there and find something at a discount. And now we're in the world's hardest market to find something at a discount. And they said to me, like, you don't have to find something at a discount. Pay retail. And all I'm doing is I'm moving the profit that I had in that other transaction. I'm just moving it into something that I like more or like better. Just like the other Ray, he wasn't trying to find something at discount. He was just trying to take something that was hard to manage or didn't fit his lifestyle anymore and move it into something that was easier to manage or something that was, a lot less work for him. So that
correct, without taking that tax hickey in the process.
Right. Yeah. And the last thing I want to do is have cash in the bank and then have inflation eat it up. I'd rather have it into some sort of asset, and I continue to get the appreciation and I continue to get the yield on it.
Perfect situation. Yes, sir.
So how do people get a hold of you? And tell us about your website and maybe a phone number for you. And then, of course, we're going to put you on our stuff, and then we'll get you to come speak to our group in a little bit more detail. Maybe actually do like a case study or something where people can actually see the process and every step of that process.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. Our good starting point is get on the internet. In our case, our website is actually Texas1031.com. That's simple, Texas spelled out. So Texas1031.com. All our contact information is on there, as well as a lot of other information, just general information. Some a little bit more specific to a given situation. Our phone number for office is 830-608-1031. So it's 830-608-1031, and we're happy to visit with you. Our phone lines have been really busy here the last few months, so we may have to call you back. Hopefully we can, we've had a couple of people answering phones, and generally speaking, yes, it could be an hour or two or even an afternoon next day that we'll be able to call you back. But it is important that we do talk to you, and happy to do so. Just any questions you might have, and we'll provide you with the package of information. A lot of time it helps to read through that before you call us or after having a second conversation. It does clear things up because we throw a lot at you in a very short period of time.
Well, cool.
So just to verify, that website is Texas1031.com.
That's it.
Okay. Cool. So for our listeners and audience, we will make sure that gets up within the next 24 hours or so to our website at lonestarria.net.
And our RIAs are in San Antonio and Houston, but in Wayne's case, he's a Texan and he knows the Texas laws and stuff, but this is really federal law. And so with exchanging, it doesn't really matter where you're at because everything can be done really, I guess, on the computer and online, right, Wayne?
That is correct. Yes, we don't ever meet most of our exchangers. Like I said, we're done from the West Coast to the East Coast, but we're always happy for people to stop by, especially if it's a fairly more complex situation. We're happy to visit with you and talk to you any way we can assist.
Okay, well, cool. I will definitely reach out and see when you'd be available to do something for us at one of our RIAs. We have the Alamo RIA in San Antonio meets on the second Tuesday of the month, and then we have Greater Houston RIA in Houston. We meet on the second Saturday. But again, all of that information is at lonestarria.net. So did you have any final questions? We have about 7 minutes left of the show. You don't have any final questions?
No, I think because we can go in the weeds real quick and then let people's heads will be spinning. It's a lot like I learned a long time ago, don't talk numbers on casually because half the people shut you down on when you start talking numbers. So.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to do is, first of all, thank Wayne for attending the radio show, and then let's talk about what we've got coming up in the RIA.
Yes. So we'll
Been
do
my
that.
pleasure. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne, and we will definitely be in touch.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon and evening. Bye-bye.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So, just to recap, or not really recap, but go into our upcoming events. As you heard earlier, next Saturday, June 11th, is, our main speaker is going to be George Salas talking about Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
Real quickly with George, he started out with doing condos, if I understood right. And I think I went to some of those, and George came on the scene, didn't know anything. He was an event planner, big time event planner, where he tried to get 1,000, 2,000 people to come to an event. So this guy can multitask and multi-process. And if there's a tough business out there, that's it. And then he came on the scene and started buying property sub 2. And then he got into rental arbitrage, which he brought that up a little bit today. Instead of qualifying, a lot of people can't qualify for the financing, or they maybe qualify, but they can't bring $100,000 to closing. So he got into what's called a rental arbitrage, which he would basically do a sandwich lease with whoever the owner was. And he could pay retail rent as long as he could run his operation out of there. And so now what he does is he kind of moved out of that one type of property, and he learned, because George is all in. If you get to know George, he's 100% in. There's no 90% George. It's 100% George. And so he went into that, and he saw the rent multipliers weren't high enough, and then he saw his houses were doing much better. And then he figured out, how do these houses need to be set up? What do they need to look like? And George is just learning in real time. And I think I heard once, I may get this wrong, but his gross income now is like $180,000, $200,000 a month. And instead of having a ton of properties, he's focused on having fewer properties, but better performing properties.
Yeah, fewer properties, but better results. But yeah, that's the ballpark he's in. I think he's somewhere in between 40 and 50 properties, so he's not.
Well, he did a 3-day class, and I went to that, and he put it all together. And I've been kind of sitting on the sideline for 10 years as this Airbnb thing's developed, and it's turned out that he did the math, and I like the math. I want to see the math. I want to see what works, what doesn't work. And then he did a little bus tour, and we went around to those properties, and so I could see. I'm kind of a touchy-feely person, and I could see exactly what he was doing, how he was doing it, and it's like, okay, I can do this. And the minute I felt like I could do this, and the minute I believed I could get that outcome, we did it. And you can already tell there's a disparity between where we're at and where he's at. He's at 3.5, 4 time multiplier, and he's going to talk a lot about that on the upcoming Saturday. But what's really valuable is that I'm at 2.5. So I know I got a lot of work to do, and I'm excited about it, because if I can get to the 3.5, 4.5, just with 4 properties, we're probably talking $100,000 a year. So I got to, first of all, it's already paying 2.5 times what I'd get in rent. and with some tweaking and some more education. And that's how much my education is costing me. I don't want to learn this in slow motion. I want to say, George, what do I do? This is it. Tell me.
Yeah.
And of course, George will tell you.
He is. George's a good guy. Like I said, I've been getting to know him over the past couple months, and I can already tell that he's very knowledgeable, and he loves giving out, not giving out, but in his presentations, they're content.
By the way,
full content.
There's something else I like about George. As they say, readers are leaders. He's the only person I know that's read as many books with Audible as I have. I mean, he's learning and growing. And when he said, he used the statement, "I'm working on my business and not in my business." That comes directly from the E-Myth. And that was a big lesson I had to learn, and it's a lesson that George learned.
Well, I don't want to immediately just like rush and change the subject here, but we do have like maybe 2 minutes left.
Okay.
So we do need to give our meeting in San Antonio. We need to let people know what that's about because our next meeting there is June 14th, which is it's the second Tuesday here in June. And Logan Fulmer is going to be our main speaker, and he's going to talk about curing title defects.
Which, if you're an investor, that's a big, big thing. And if you don't, the way it works now, people don't cure a title defect, they walk from the deal. And if you think a title company has the capacity to fix your title defects, you're already doing it wrong, because they don't. They can fix simple things and they'll tell you how to fix them. But if you need 30 hours or 20 hours or massive research or negotiation with the parties, you don't have a chance. And Logan will talk to us about that. Would you do me a favor, though, if you can fit it in, is explain to somebody what an average RIA meeting looks like. How do we typically run those?
So the flow of a meeting is we'll have networking and food. Networking is very key, and then we'll have some announcements. We're have case study that we'll do,
right?
Where somebody will break down a deal that they've done, a real deal, not a hypothetical. And then
we do haves and wants,
and then do haves and wants, deal a minute.
Right.
We also have a tip of the month where we'll have an expert, give a 15 or 20 minute presentation on a tip, and then we'll have a main speaker presenting the main topic. And then a lot of times we'll have networking afterwards, and then possibly like another session
lunch or something,
or go to lunch or something.
One thing you do, James, that I've got to compliment you on is, and maybe this isn't a good style for everybody, but for me, it's a good style. Is you really make it content based. You really deliver a lot of content in every meeting.
Yes, that's what our goal, and that's what everybody wants to have is they want to come and learn what it is that we could do and how they can do it too. So we're almost out of time. I'm probably going to get cut off. LoneStarREIA.net, LoneStarREIA.net, and that's where you can get all of our information.